And just to go back on the idea of the existence of a discarnate element of who we are, I went into my first psychedelic ceremony, this vision quest, which I was very
Yeah,
blessed to be linked up with a proper shaman when I was 18, just graduated high school. And
lucky man.
I was super anti-religion at that point. I'd gone to
Mhm.
Texas and I'd seen how none of the religious doctrines that had been kind of pushed towards me had made any sense. I'd been to the dungeons of the Inquisition in Italy on a family trip and was horrified. And I was like,
Mhm.
this is all nonsense. I was very much materialist, rationalist, reductionist.
Yeah,
And I went and did my first journey, which was a
yeah,
combination of psilocybin and MDMA. And I felt my body completely evaporate. And
yeah.
there was no other word I had for what remained than the soul, the unborn, the undying element of who I am beyond this one lifetime. And that changed everything for me. There was no way I could dispute it. There's no way my mind, I stayed up all night that night. It was a rainy, windy night, stayed up all night just writing in my journal because it was that moment of a radical earthquake paradigm shift from
And that
this.
paradigm shift, if I may intervene, came from an experience that you had. It didn't come from
Exactly.
something you were taught in school or in university. It came from a direct personal experience, so much more valuable.
Yeah. And no one can ever tell me what it was and what it wasn't. I was there. I felt it. And I think this is one of the advantages of psychedelics is they give you the opportunity for gnosis, to actually experience what you're thinking about and philosophizing about.
I completely agree. This is, again, psychedelics are a subject that has been for far too long demonized in our society. We're beginning now to wake up to the incredible therapeutic benefits of psychedelics, that people who suffer from post traumatic stress disorder or depression can be very quickly healed with just a relatively small number of deep psychedelic experiences, whereas the big pharma drugs do nothing for them. So there's a beginning of an awakening which is shifting the paradigm on psychedelics, but they're still regarded as in some way hazardous or dangerous. But let's ask ourselves, why are they so effective in curing PTSD and depression? In both cases, PTSD and depression, the affected individual is locked into a very rigid frame and can't see out beyond it. They get trapped in a recurring loop of unpleasantness. And what the psychedelics do is they break that grip. They allow the mind to reset and to contemplate possibilities that hadn't been contemplated before. It's also true with people who are experiencing anxiety at the prospect of death, typically people with terminal cancer diagnoses. They've also had their last weeks or months transformed by experiences with psilocybin. Who those experiences have shown them that the death of the physical body is really nothing, that it's not the end, that it might be the beginning of another great adventure,
Hmm.
and that what we are fundamentally is consciousness. And that's why I regard our society's reaction to psychedelics, until this relatively recent research has begun to get a toehold, our society's reaction to psychedelics, and still the case in most countries and most states, has been to make psychedelics illegal, to demonize them, to threaten those who use them with prison, and to defame their names. And yet, uh, again, this is a point that I regard as extremely important. If we're not sovereign over our own consciousness, then we're not sovereign over anything, and it's impossible to speak about freedom when the government holds the keys to our consciousness and tells us what we may or may not experience. And then, of course, the flack will come back, and they'll say, oh, but psychedelics lead people to do things that are dangerous to others. Well, actually, first of all, they don't, and
Hmm.
secondly, we already have laws that deal with people who do dangerous things to others. So we don't need laws that patrol the inner sanctum of our consciousness. There's just so much wrong with the way this issue has been handled in the modern world, and my only hope is that it doesn't get completely taken over by big pharma,
Sure.
that other dead hand doesn't step in. And I know already of pharmaceutical companies who are taking out patents on slightly tweaked molecules in order to make it their own when nature provides it free of charge to all of us.
Yeah, so many, powerful thoughts, and I absolutely unequivocally agree with you in all of this. And it's really, there's an upside down way of thinking. They think of it as not being sober when actually on these medicines it feels like a hyper sobriety, like you've kind of woken up from the delusional dream that you've been in your waking reality. So it's almost not being sober. It's actually being more sober than you ever were. And it's not
Being
I
more
may harm
sober,
other
and
people. Yeah.
yeah,
It's not I may harm other people. It's actually, if every time you've been an asshole is then shown right in your face, and you have to
right.
deal right in your face, and you have to deal with every time you've said something mean or hurt somebody or been thoughtless, you're really, it's your
These
consciousness.
plant and fungi medicines are real teachers. They
Yeah.
teach us the mistakes we've made, which we've normally blocked out because we don't want to hear about our own mistakes. They force us to confront them, and that gives us the opportunity not to repeat those mistakes in the future.
Hmm.
These are incredibly helpful medicines. And apropos of the word sober, I mean, look at the one consciousness altering drug that's particularly valued and glorified in our society, which is alcohol.
Hmm.
Alcohol is truly a dangerous drug. It leads people into very aggressive behavior. It gets them into fights. It leads to car smashes. It destroys the liver. It's a huge health risk. And yet, and fundamentally, people do not drink that glass of wine or that can of beer because of the taste. They may like the taste, but they're fundamentally drinking it because of the brief alteration of consciousness that it brings to them. The most boring drug on the planet is glorified by
Yeah.
our civilization, and it's a consciousness altering drug. But yet, other consciousness altering substances, which lead us to question the mainstream narrative, and psychedelics are paramount amongst those substances. Those have been demonized for so long. I hope we're going to see the end of that period of suppression, but I suspect it's still several years away.
Yeah, I think the psychedelics are playing a role in this as they become more, adopted mainstream. The mental health of our society has been in a steady decline, and these psychedelics are providing a solution. So people may go in to work on their depression or their anxiety or their PTSD. Say, I'm going to go get this treatment. Oh, whoops! I just met with God. I just
Yeah.
found the eternal existence of my soul as a side effect of my anxiety, which I totally forgot about because now my whole world is different, and I don't think I'm going to die and go to nothing anymore. And I think this is going to happen more and more, where people are going to treat some medical condition, which will be proven to be able to be treated by these things, but as a side effect, they're going to encounter the ineffable, numinous, nature of reality, and that's going to start to shift this paradigm, one by
Definitely.
one.
And everybody, one by one, who's taken the risk of breaking these draconian laws and experimented with psychedelics themselves, vast majority of such people have had these life transforming experiences also. And it is indeed leading to questioning of the mainstream narrative, which is exactly what we need in the world
Yeah.
today. We need this harmful, hateful mainstream narrative to be questioned and in fact overthrown.
Yeah.
It's past sell by date. It's doing more harm, much more harm than good. And we
Indeed.
need to change everything about the way that things function in our societies today. And we need to, again, psychedelics offer this realization that we're not just meat robots. We're not just here to work and produce and consume. We're here to have the full, in-depth human experience with all that involves. We're here to face the challenges and to answer the questions that our lives confront us with, rather than to be numbed and dulled down by alcohol and TV shows that just encourage more production and consumption. This is a transformative moment in the human story. It'll be interesting to see how it works out. I'm 72 years old now. I'm not sure how much longer I've got to see this happen, but I hope very much to come back in my next life and find the world very very much changed. One of the mysteries of past lives, or perhaps the interesting point of it, is that when reborn in a new body, part of the deal is that you forget your past life. You may remember it as a child up until the age of 7. Then it gradually drifts away, particularly in societies like ours. And that kind of makes sense to me, because if you knew the rules of the game, if you knew that this was a theater of experience, that you're here to learn and to grow and to develop, then you might not play the game straight. But if you're not clear on what exactly is going on, you are going to play the game straight, and you're going to have to deal with the choices you make, and learn from them. I think physical life in a physical human body is an incredible privilege that the universe has given us. And it's tragic to see how our society conspires, and I'll use that word quite deliberately here, conspires to diminish that privilege and to limit our potential rather than to open it up.